what it is, what's happening. So just as promised, we're going to start diving into some new interesting stuff. So tonight, on the way home, because it takes me an hour to get home from work now, I stopped at the old Sunken Freight, aka Harbor Freight, and I picked up one of these, it's pretty heavy, one of these Badland 12,000 pound winches. Now, like I said, we're going to try to get back to some of our regular content on the channel. So we're planning a four-wheel drive trip in about, I think a month and a half, 2 months. So we're going to take the little Toyota 4Runner that I have. It's dark outside, but I would take you out there and show you. The truck, but I think some of you guys know the truck. It's a truck I've had for quite some time. So we're going to build a winch mount in the front. Now the truck's already got a lift, 33s. So I wanted to put a winch on the truck. Truck doesn't weigh much. I've spent a lot of time online. A lot of good reviews on this winch. Now I got two friends of mine have these on their car trailers. And they haven't had any problems. So I thought, you know, it's 349 bucks, but if you're one of those Harbor Freight Club members, you get it cheaper. I did buy the controller. Controller's pretty nice. I did buy the $80 warranty, which covers it for a year. I mean, I figured why not? Got a little hook there. A little fancy little Pool Johnson. We got some relays. Interesting. And we got the winch itself. It comes with pretty much everything. It comes with a fair lead. There's the box that gets mounted on the top. Looks like it's got power wire enough to go to the batteries. Doesn't look like a half bad unit. Now, like I said, a couple friends of mine, they're running one of these, a couple of them on car trailers. They've never had any issues, so I thought, why not give it a try? Now, I did go and I did buy the one with the wire cable. They do offer one with the synthetic cable, and they do offer another 12,000 pound winch with wire rope and synthetic. It's a little more money. But this is, at the end of the day, this is a 12,000 pound winch. What's a Toyota 4Runner weigh? Should be fine. I really don't see us really using it a whole lot, but it's nice to have one. So I bought the winch. Not wench. Winch. There he is there. And I bought the universal mounting plate. Got some ideas in my head. I was really going to buy Trail Gear. Makes a really nice front bumper that also has a winch mount. It's like almost 600 bucks, but shipping is $200. It's just a little bit more money that I want to spend on this truck. Because I'm going to end up cutting some of the bumper up anyway because of some other stuff I wanted to do. So I decided that I'm not going to buy the Trail Gear bumper. I spent some money on the winch. I have my own pipe bender, and I've got some, I think I got some 1 3/4 pipe that I bought for another project I didn't use. So I think once I get the universal mount kind of where I want, I got an idea up in here. I know, it's way up in there. That I think I'm just going to make the rest of the bumper myself, save some money, put some money in some other places. So, hey, it's a winch. What do you expect? Looks pretty good. I mean, all the pieces are here. So, we'll probably get started on that. I don't know, maybe one night this week. I'm going to try to, like I said, getting back to the roots of the channel. I'm going to try to, drop some bolts. Try to do a video a week of, stuff that's going on around here, stuff that I'm getting into. I just picked this up tonight, and I'm going to bring you along on what I'm going to do to mount it on the front of this little Toyota and make it work. Yesterday, being Sunday, today is Monday, I did sell some trucks that I had up north in storage, and I brought home my my 70, I think it's a 75 F350 wrecker. Let's take a look real quick. As you can see, I'm still putting stuff away, getting the place organized. But I did bring home the 75 Ford F350 with the Holmes 500 wrecker. It's a really nice old truck. Going to do the brakes on it. Going to clean the bed up, repaint the bed. Finished getting the lettering off that somebody else started taking off. And just try to clean the truck up and then maybe get my name put on the side of the truck. And new tires. Just, you know, parades, local car shows, that kind of stuff. Still got a bunch of motors to put away. There's still a bunch of motors in the back of this truck. You can't really see it, but there's our little Toyota project we're going to start fooling with here. We'll get a better picture of it out in the daylight. But as you can see, the shop is a total mess. One day at a time. So, like I said, one day at a time, we'll get this place straightened out. I've been working on fixing all these lights and adding more lights. In fact, tonight when I was at Harbor Freight, these are actually Harbor Freight LED shop lights. And what I've been doing is, right there. What I've been doing is I've been wiring up outlets. I'm going to put outlets all through the ceiling. That way you just put the light up, plug the light in. This way, when the light goes bad, you can unplug it, throw it in the trash, buy another one, and plug it in. We're actually going to rearrange a couple of these rafters so that I could put the lift up. The 2-post lift that was in the old shop is going to go in here. That's why I haven't put a ceiling in. Here in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to clean all this mess up, and I'm going to start insulating and putting walls up on this side so that I can start organizing this side and just kind of work my way around. I'm going to insulate the shop really well, insulate the ceiling, and then I'm going to put a mini split in, which gives me heat and AC, which would be nice. So I'll be able to have this place cool in the summer and nice and warm in the winter, and be comfortable to work out here. Because I get home, it's about an hour ride to get home from my job. So it'd be nice if the shop was already, you know, maybe put a thermostat that's hooked to an app on my phone or something. That way I go, oh, I'm going to go out in the garage tonight, and I can already click it on. And by the time I get home, get in the house, get something to eat, come out, it'd be nice and warm in here. But I could keep it at maybe 50 some degrees or something, so that all this metal and all this tools and all stay nice and warm. That way when I bump the heat up a little bit, it doesn't have to work as hard. That's the idea, the theory. We hope that'll work. So, got the wrecker home. Going to do some work to the wrecker. Probably going to wait till it gets a little bit warmer out, because it really doesn't fit in the shop unless I fold the booms down. But it's got a bunch of extra lights added on it, so I don't think it'll fit in the shop anyway, because I have low doors. It is what it is. The building was here when I bought the house. Of course, I've only owned the house, a couple of weeks. So it is what it is. I'm not really looking to rebuild a building or rip the roof off and raise it. I'm not doing all that. So I'll have to work on it outside, and then I'm okay with that. Now, I do have a carport next door that I do have 2 wreckers stored in. I'm actually going to build doors on one end and close the other end off so that I can actually have that as I'm going to use it as like a paint booth, and then when I'm not using it, I'm going to store stuff in there, vehicles that I don't want out in the weather. So the wrecker will actually fit in there, so I could, you know, do something with that. I'm not really going to spend, I'm not going to insulate it and do all that crazy stuff. I'm just going to put a back on it and make some doors for the front of it. Just probably 2 great big swing open doors. That way, whatever I put in there, I can actually close the doors. That's, you know, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. So the wrecker, like I said, the idea with it is we're going to do the brakes on it, go through all the lights, get the truck up, running and driving. I believe it's a 75,000 original miles on that truck. It's a 390 4-barrel truck, factory air. It's an XLT Ranger, which means it's got carpet, deluxe door panels, cloth seat, headliner, AC, power steering, power brakes, 390 4-barrel. I think I already said that. All the trim on the truck. So it was the Cadillac in its day. Now, I'm not going to restore that truck. I just want to kind of, I guess you want to say, preserve it. I am going to repaint the bed because the bed looks kind of crappy. So I'm going to repaint the outside of the bed and maybe the floor of the bed. But I'm going to try to keep most of it original. If the name on the door was still there, I would have left the original name on the door. But somebody else started taking it off, and they really kind of did a crappy job. They kind of scratched the paint up. So I'm going to letter it with my name some way to kind of hide it and make it look a little more presentable. And I'll just put my name on the door, like maybe my name, Auto Salvage or something, even though I'm not an Auto Salvage, but just something like that. Because that's what's going to be on. The rat wrecker is actually going to have my name, and it's going to say my name, Junkyard, or Auto Salvage, something along them lines. My dream was always to own a junkyard. Well, 50 years old, I don't think I'm going to own a junkyard at this point. So, it can't hurt to dream, right? So that's the plan with the truck. You know, the whole reason I wanted the truck was when I was about, I'm going to dive into a little story time with Ed. Some guys seem to like story time with Ed. So this last segment will be story time with Ed. So when I was about 19 or 20 years old, give or take, I saved my money up. It was $1,500, which 30 years ago, $1,500, well, $1,500 is still a good bit of money, but 30 years ago, it was a lot of money. I saved up, I bought this 75 F350 wrecker with a Holmes 440 on it. Truck was in bad shape. Cab was really rusty, hadn't run in years, no brakes, tires were all junk. The bed was in decent shape. The bed actually was in really good shape, had a couple spots of rust, but all the cables were shot, none of the lights worked. You know, typical truck that sat for years. Now, mind you, this was 30 years ago. So it was in rough shape then. Bought the truck because I've always wanted a tow truck. I grew up in a repair shop, gas stations. My father owned a couple gas stations. He owned a repair shop. He even owned a sweeping business where we swept parking lots. We had trucks, fleet of trucks that, you know, swept parking lots. So I grew up around trucks and equipment. My father never wanted anything to do with tow trucks, and I wanted him to have tow trucks in the worst way. But he's like, tow truck insurance is too much money. We got sweeper trucks. We got this. We got that. He had friends that owned towing companies, so he just always used them, and that was how Pop was. When I got to be about 19, 20-ish, somewhere's in that area, I saved my money up, and I bought this tow truck. And like I said, she was rough. And I spent every dime I had. I at the time I rented a one-bay shop, so you could get two cars in there, but it was kind of tight to walk around. But it had a little office, it had a bathroom. I don't remember what the rent was, but I rented the shop by myself. I'm a young kid. I'm struggling to, you know, make money. I did have, I did have a Toyota pickup with a V8 in it, but I think I had it apart at that time. And I forget what I was driving. I think I was driving a 69 Chevy pickup, and I bought this wrecker. And like I said, I'm broke. So the $1,500, I was broke after that. But I bought this wrecker, get it over to my shop, pulled the motor out of it because it wouldn't run. It was just, the oil was nasty. So I pulled the motor out of it. I go through the motor, get the motor in the truck. I get it running. I go through the brakes, the best I can go through the brakes, you know, 19, 20-year-old kid. I learned a lot about how the stuff works. You know, I fixed the truck by myself. You know, I went out and bought cable. I went out and bought the rubber sling straps. Now, I was fortunate enough that when I was young, I hung around guys that had these trucks. So I knew how to operate these trucks. I knew how they worked. I knew how to tow cars with them with a 4x4. I could tow stuff without tearing stuff up because I hung around guys and grew up around these trucks. So when I bought this truck, I already really knew how to, not that I was an expert, I'm not saying that, but I'd been around them enough that I already knew how the trucks operated, how to use the truck. So I was very fortunate in that end. So I get the truck to where it's usable and it's drivable. I get hooked up with a guy that I knew. He owned a small towing company. He basically, all his towing was private properties. That's all he did. I mean, he did some cash calls here and there, but mainly he did private properties, like apartment complexes, shopping centers. You know, we towed stuff out of fire lanes. I got hooked up with this guy, and we did that kind of towing. And I did that for quite a few years, and it was a lot of fun. Basically, we were stealing cars with a license. We towed cars out of apartment complexes. The apartment complex would give you a list of cars that they stickered, and they said they had to leave. You know, flat tires, no tags, motors out of them. I mean, these degenerates that live in these apartment complexes are something else. And I don't mean everybody that lives in them, but we towed from the real seedy apartment complexes. There weren't no upscale people in these places. And, you know, what's funny is, check out a guy called Tow Trucker on YouTube. He does private property towing out of Atlanta, Georgia, I believe. I watch him religiously, and it's great. I just watched one of his videos today. He does private property towing. And what I find, I enjoy it because I did that kind of towing. What I find really funny about it is these people come out with the same excuses. Oh, I already talked to the office. They coming to get my car today. I called AAA. They're coming today. You ain't taking my car. It wasn't stickered. Same excuses 30 years ago. Same exact excuses 30 years ago. I used to hear the same thing. Now today, private property towing is probably a lot more dangerous than it was 30 years ago. And I can tell you, I did it for probably 6 or 7 years. And 30 years ago, we never had nobody pull a gun, nobody pulled a bat, nobody fought us. We had confrontations. Most of the time you mentioned cops, and they were gone. And back then, we didn't have cell phones. We had beepers. That was about it. Had to go down the street and use a payphone. But we never had no issues. I mean, people would want to argue with you. You're not taking my car. I already talked to the office. If you talk to the office, it would be off the list because we stop in the office before we tell anything and check. Did any of these people call? No. Go get that green Chevy pickup. It's got 2 flat tires. No sooner you back up to it. Oh, I already talked to the office. You ain't taking my truck. Yeah, we are because it's already been on the list. It hasn't been scratched off, so it goes. Bye-bye. And I can tell you, we towed thousands of cars. And I'll bet you 8 out of 10 never got picked up. I could tell you one time we towed, I'll never forget. There's quite a few cars I won't ever forget because they always stuck with us. We towed a Ford pickup truck one time. And I want to say this truck was probably a 90 or 91. So at the time, the truck would have been 5 years old, maybe 6 years old, somewhere's in that neighborhood, give or take. Nice looking pickup, just plain Jane white pickup with a metal work cap on it. Apartment complex said, tags are dead. It's been sitting in the same spot 6 months. Get it out of here. We loaded up. We wouldn't touch the cars for 30 days. We'd dump it in the lot, and we parked everything nice and neat in the lot. And the lot would get about 150 cars in it, and then every 30 days we would purge the lot out. We'd go, because everything was written on the windshield when we towed it and everything. So when 30 days were up, we called auto theft. Auto theft would come out. They would run the VIN for stolen. The bank wants it. Any of that bullshit. They did all that. Well, I don't think they did the bank part, but any which way. After that, they gave us paperwork that we could junk them or apply for a title. Sometimes he would apply for titles for these things. Sometimes he would hold on to them and say he's going to, and then 6 months later, we'd end up junking it anyway. So this Ford pickup was a really nice truck. Like I said, just a plain Jane, 2-wheel drive. Actually, it was a 2-wheel drive, 6-cylinder stick truck. And the only reason I really remember it was my tow truck was a 75 F350. And the ignition key was real worn. And the ignition key on my truck worked the ignition on that pickup. And we were able to get it started. We Slim Jim'd and got in it. And the key actually worked ignition. I've got a ball of keys. I think they're in my rollback. There's probably I probably got about 100 Ford truck keys. And almost guaranteed one out of them will start one of these Ford trucks. So we started the truck up. It ran. And we would always dig through the truck or car and see what people leave in them. You know, we'd find tools in cars. We'd find, you name it, clothes, brand new clothes, shoes, all kinds of stuff people leave in their cars. It's amazing. Sometimes we'd find a title to the car. But I can honestly tell you, we never found any drugs and we never found any stack of money like people always claim they would find. We never found any of that in all the years we did it. Now, we would get some interesting stuff. I mean, we would get tools, toolboxes. I mean, it was crazy. So we dug through the cab of this truck and I found a set of keys. And they were like little tiny keys, I was like, I wonder if they worked the locks on this toolbox, on the cap. Because the cap had big sides that opened up. Put the key in it, it worked. The truck was heavy. When we towed it, we noticed it was heavy. We opened it up. It was full of tools. The truck was like a handyman guy or something. Saws, sawzalls, chop saws, generator, hammers, everything that like a handyman guy would need or like a maintenance guy would have. This truck was full of it. It all belongs to the guy that owns the lot or owns the tow lot now. It's all his stuff. But this would happen on the regular. Finding stuff. And like I said, a lot of times people would come get the stuff. Later on, we found out that the truck belonged to an African guy, and he went back to his country and left. Later on we found out like his apartment was full of. It was literally like he just got up, went to work one day, and never came home. because we got to know the maintenance guys, and sometimes we talk to the guys, and we happened to see the maintenance guy one day, and he asked us whatever happened to that truck, and we told him. He's like, man, he said, that guy left the apartment. The apartment was full of furniture, TVs. He said it was just like the guy went to work and never came home. Food still in the refrigerator and everything. Because after so many days, they evict him, they got to go in there and clean it out. But they said the guy went back to Africa for whatever reason, and he never came back. Just left everything. It was crazy. But give tow trucker, if you're into the towing and you're into like private property towing and that kind of stuff, give tow trucker, look him up on YouTube. It's great video, great content. The content is 100% real. It's the exact same content that if we had cameras back in the day, we would be blowing the internet up right now, the stuff we did. We used to do private property towing from this bookstore in our hometown. Now, our hometown's small, but there's a university there, University of Delaware. University of Delaware is huge. It pretty much runs the town. Well, there's a bar on Main Street. The bar doesn't have a lot of parking. So across the street, which is just a two little Main street in the town, was a bookstore. Now, the bookstore's long gone. It's something else now. But back 30 years ago, it was a bookstore, and the guy sold books to the university students. Well, he got to the point where he got tired of the patrons of the bar parking in his parking lot. He called us, set up a contract, and we were to remove anything in the parking lot after, I want to say it was 7 o'clock when he closed the store. He didn't want nothing in the parking lot. And being on the tow end, it's great because we're getting to make money. But I totally understand what this gentleman what he wanted. The patrons from the bar would pee on the back of the building, piss on the building, and throw trash in it. So when he'd open up the back door, the place smelled like a urinal. You can't blame the guy for not letting them park in the parking lot. Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights were our big nights. I think there was 10 parking spaces behind the building on an angle. We could pull cars from the end spaces. By the time we'd load 2 up, leave, go to the yard, which was only a couple miles away, unload them. We'd log the cars in with the Newcastle police and come back. There'd be 2 cars in that spot. We could never pull all the cars in a night. Now, when I say log a car in, what we used to do was we would get the VIN number, make, model of the car, and the tag number and the color. And we would have to call the police department. There was a special number that we would call. I think it just was to the front desk, and we'd say, we're from such and such towing, and we want to log this car in. And you would give them all the information. That way, when the owner of the car tries to call and report the car stolen, no, sir, your car's not stolen. It's actually over here at so-and-so's towing. It was towed because you're not supposed to be in the parking spot. Now, we had signs in every single parking space. So if you pulled into the parking space, there was one of our signs right there that said you can't park here unless you're a patron of the store. But if it's after 7 o'clock, you can't be here. End of story. We towed so many cars. I think back then, we got $25 a car, I think is what we got. So we would try to run as many cars in a night because at the end of the night, we got paid. We got paid every night. So we were trying to run, as many cars. I think we would average, I want to say we would do 7 or 8 cars each in a night, I think is what it was the max you could do because no matter how fast you could hook them up, you still had to go through town, down to the yard, which was about, I want to say it was like 4 miles away. And then you had to log it in, lock the gates. So you could only, your time, you could only get so many in a night. Now, me and my buddy, we had it down to a science. Now, we were slinging these cars just like that old wrecker out there is. It's a sling truck. We had it down to a system. So he would sit on the back of my truck, and I'd have the PTO on. And as I'm backing up, he's lowering the sling down, and he would throw the chains under it, hook it, and I would start to pull away. And as I'm pulling away, he's raising it up. We go down the street, park it. I'd sit on the back of his truck, and we'd do the same thing. I mean, we could get cars so fast, and we were so quiet. We would take, on the back of the truck, we had rubber mats so that the chains, when you laid the chains or pulled the chains up, you could be really quiet. And the trucks were quiet. I mean, we had quiet mufflers on them. We kept everything greased so that when you ran to PTO, the truck was quiet. We could snatch cars so fast, it was amazing. And we would run cars out of the private property lot. Then most of the time around 1 o'clock, that's when the bars shut down in our state, we would go over to our apartment complexes. We had 15 apartment complexes scattered through the little county. We checked the apartment complexes. You know, we always had a list of cars that we could get, but some of our apartment complexes had stickers. So the cars had to have a sticker in the window or on the rearview mirror. And we'd walk around with a little flashlight. No sticker, it was automatic removal. Didn't matter, because some of these apartment complexes were gated. Now, what kind of sucks is, what if you have a guest over? The guests were really always supposed to, at these gated ones that had the stickers, the guests were always supposed to get a piece of paper to put in the windshield. If they didn't get it, they got pulled. It was it was the rules of the apartment complex. We didn't make the rules. And that's what a lot of people in the comments on Tow Truckers page are always, oh, you guys are predator towing, you're scamming. It's not. It was something that has to be done. A lot of people don't understand. These apartment complexes cannot have cars with the wheels missing, motors out of them, smashed up. You can't have that stuff there. Code enforcement is on these complexes to keep these places nice. And like I said, most of the places we pulled cars from were troubled apartment complexes. You know, Section 8, just they were crappy neighborhoods. So they always constantly were on these apartment complexes not to have the junk cars outside. And I can tell you, 30 years ago, and out of all the cars that we towed out of apartment complexes, and I'm not talking about the ones we did from like the bar, cars that we towed from apartment complexes, I'd say 8 out of 10 of those cars never got picked up. And I'd say 9 out of 10 of them were just flat out junk. Like they had no business being on the road. I guarantee they had no insurance. Lucky they had a good tag on it. Half the cars were just flat out garbage. I mean, I wish I had some pictures of some of the cars we towed. It was amazing. I remember this one time we had, and I did not tow this car, but this car showed up in our lot a couple of times. So during the week, I really didn't do much with the tow yard, because during the week it was slow, and he had a couple guys that worked during the day. Me and my buddy, we mostly did all the night stuff because that's what we liked. And we made a ton of money working a few nights a week that we just we didn't do nothing during the week. We kind of just were degenerates ourselves. So I went to the yard one day and I saw this 70 Chevelle sitting in the lot. And I went, where'd that come from? Kind of neat car. It was like flat black primer with stripes on it, but it had like a cow hood on it and had wheels on it, you know. Remember, this is 30 years ago, so everybody had a hot car back in the day. Nowadays, everybody's got a, beater. So the guy in the yard, Charlie says, we towed it from such and such apartments. Well, the passenger front wheel was missing off the car. I said, I guess you towed it for no wheel. He says, yeah. So the girl that owned the car, she come down like the following day. And she was working on the car herself. She was trying to put a spindle on the car because I think the wheel bearing went bad and tore the spindle up. So she had it apart. Apartment complex had it towed because the car's apart. So Charlie says, well, I can help you finish putting the car back together for a couple of dollars. So they put the car back together right there in the tow yard, and she drove the car off. Car sounded really, really healthy when it left. We're like, man, that thing really sounds good. 3 weeks later, the car's back in the yard again. What the hell's that car back here for now? And he said they towed it for, I forget what they towed it for the second time. The girl was real nice. She came down, paid it, got the car out. About a couple months later, the car's back again. This time the girl never came and got the car. So the car sat there for its whole 30 days. Now, when we purged a lot of anywhere from 100 to 150 cars. I mean, that's how many cars we towed in a month. We towed a lot of cars from these apartment complexes. So we're purging a lot. And he's got the Chevelle on the list to go to junk. And I said to him, why are you junking the Chevelle? And it wasn't like it was a nice car, but it was kind of cool. And he says, well, the girl said the motor's blown up. She came and got her personal stuff out of it. He let her get whatever she wanted, but she's like, I'm not going to fool the car no more. Blew the motor up. Well, at the time, I was putting a motor together for my Toyota. I had an 84 Toyota on 38s with a small block Chevy in it. I had tore the motor up in it and was looking to put it on the motor in the car, the truck. So I needed a set of heads. So I said, well, I wonder how bad it blew up. I said, we know it ran pretty good. I said, you care if I pull the motor out of it? I need a set of heads. Charlie says, I just keep the cow hood off of it for me. He says, it's got aluminum intake on it. He said, I'd like to have the intake. He said, but you can have whatever's left. Okay. So I go down the yard. Now, I had a Holmes 440 wrecker. You could manually slide the boom out and use it to pull motors. So it was a summertime. I went down, unbolted the hood, set the hood over where he wanted it. I unbolted the motor, pulled the motor out of the car. I set the motor down on a tire on the ground. He said he wanted the intake. Fair enough. He's giving me the motor. I go to unbolt the intake, and as I'm getting the last two bolts out, the intake's trying to lift up on its own. I'm like, what the hell's going on with this thing? I never seen nothing like that on a small block Chevy. I get the intake off. It's got a lifter pan in it. So it's got this little sheet metal pan that holds all the lifters in the valley, I guess in case a push rod bends or a push rod falls out, the lifter don't go flying out. It was a Moroso lifter pan in there. I get the intake off. I'm like, holy shit. All the intake, it's ported. I mean, it's ported like nobody's business. I'm like, wow. So I put the intake in the parts trailer. I load the motor up. I take it back to my shop. I go to pull the valve covers off. It had just like cheesy chrome valve covers. I take them off. It's got roller rockers, screw-in studs, push rod guide plates, triple valve springs. I'm like, whoa, what's this thing? Get the heads off. It's got like 11-to-1 pop-up pistons in it. It was a 4-bolt main motor. It spun a rod. So I trashed a rod and kind of messed the crank up. But I ended up using those heads on the motor and putting it in my Toyota. And the bottom end of the motor I had around for years. It laid around, and finally I ended up selling it to somebody. But it ended up having a pretty hot motor in it. We would get some interesting pieces once in a while, you know. It was kind of neat. But we had a lot of fun. It was like legal stealing of cars, I guess you could say, legally. I mean, we would get a lot of stuff. But the drama side of it, you know, you hear guys, you see these tow shows on TV with all the drama. That's all bull crap. I can tell you right now, out of all the cars we towed, and we towed a lot of cars, and we towed a lot of cars from the bars, we towed cars out of fire lanes, we get a lot of this. That's what we got. There was no throwing of hands. There's nobody pulling a gun. Now, today you might get the gun pulled on you, and you might get somebody with a bat. But back then, you got a lot of this. And most of the times, once you said, fine, we'll call the cops and let them settle it, most of the time they'd run their mouth and leave because they knew they were beat. They had no grounds to stand on. They knew they were beat. And what's nice about today is, today everybody's got a smartphone. So you can video them and you can take pictures. When they sticker cars at apartment complexes, they take a picture. Because these people pulled the same trick that they pulled 30 years ago. Oh, you didn't put a sticker on my car. There's no sticker on it. Yeah, we got a picture of it, and it's documented in the office at the apartment office. So you're beat. But yeah, give Tow Trucker a look if you like private property towing. He does have some confrontations, but it's a lot of this. That's all it is. It's a lot of this, and that's all it was 30 years ago. And it's funny because the excuses that people give on his channel are the same excuses that I heard 30 years ago. It's so funny. So I'm going to wrap this video up. I've talked long enough with my lip service. Just kind of trying to give you guys a little something to enjoy to watch. But that truck brings back a lot of memories for me because that's what I did not have that's a Holmes 500. And a Holmes 500 is a twin line, which means it's got 2 winches. And the booms actually swing out as well. Mine was a 440, which was a single line, single winch wrecker. You could do a lot with a Holmes 440, and you could do a lot with a 500. But back in the day, if you owned a 500, you had the Cadillac. I mean, that was the top of the line truck, other than stepping up to a hydraulic truck, which really hydraulic trucks didn't really, they were out there in the 70s, but they really didn't start gaining traction until like the mid 80s. Kind of like rollbacks. Rollbacks have been out there they've been out there just as long as sling trucks. But rollbacks were so much money back in the day that most guys bought a wrecker because a wrecker was cheaper. Rollbacks really started gaining traction in, I would say, me personally, around my area and what I was involved in growing up. Rollbacks didn't really start gaining traction until late 80s. I want to say early 90s to mid 90s. And then after that, everybody has a rollback now. Hardly anybody buys a wrecker. You might get a little snatch truck like a repo truck or something, but 90% of tow companies rollbacks. Rollbacks are easier. Rollbacks are good because most cars are really tore up. Today's cars, when they wreck, they implode. Back in the day, all the cars that we towed that were wrecked were all full-framed, heavy cars. So you run into a brick wall, the thing still rolled. Plus, all the stuff we towed back then all had steel bumpers. You know, you had a lot of trucks. Trucks always have bumpers, but a lot of these newer trucks you can't tow from the front anymore because they got plastic all in the front. But I'm gonna say around my area, thinking early to mid 90s is when rollbacks really started to gain traction. A lot of people started buying them, and everybody was getting away from the sling trucks. Because I did work for Charlie for many years on the side, like I started with, and I remember towards the end we really kind of did get away from the sling trucks, and he had bought some rollbacks, and we were using towards the end of me working with him. We were using the rollbacks like the last couple of years I worked with him. And I just got out of it because at that point in my life, I was, getting older, and I had a real job, a real 8 to 5 job. So working in the evenings and working my day job got to be a little too much. So, you just, life changes and you move on. But that was definitely in my late teens, early 20s, definitely a highlight of my life. I always remember. Me and my buddy, we had a lot of fun towing these cars. Like I said, it was like legal stealing. I mean, we would sometimes take tractor trailers. Some of the big shopping centers we towed for didn't want no tractor trailers in the parking lot. Sometimes we'd beat on the side of them. There'd be no driver in them. We'd Slim Jim them. A lot of times the keys were in them trucks, and we drove them out of there. Some of the ones that we didn't drive, he had a guy that would come tow them. A lot of times we drove them out of there because a lot of times the keys were in them. So that's my little video for today. I hope you guys enjoy it. The next video I'm going to do is we're going to start fitting up that winch and making some kind of... I bought the universal winch plate. I think I'm going to use it in conjunction with some other stuff that I have an idea up here. And I'll share that video. If the weather cooperates, we'll probably just work on it outside the door here because I've got green bean in here, which is from the old shop, and I got a customer truck over there. And as you can see, yeah, we're still a mess. We're still a hot mess. So look, holla at your boy. Catch me on the next one.